All right. Thank you so much for joining us today on Evolving Educators. This is a podcast for everyone in the education profession to help you improve and better your craft. Today, I'm Chris Hurst, and I've got with me Dr. Donda Sladen. Hey, Donda, what's new?
Well, we added a few spots at our school because we're growing. And what I noticed coming to West Fork, we're in the great Library Media Center again, and I noticed a lot of walls going up, Chris.
That's right. They've had so much construction happen seemingly overnight.
Yes, it does feel overnight. And that was, they're working fast. It looks good.
They are. I feel like I just flew the drone here for construction updates for the district. And every time I come here, something new has been built.
Yes. So I'm really excited about our next guest. So Nicole Land, she's our Human Resources Director. And one of the things we talked about as a topic, especially this time of year, we want to make sure that our aspiring leaders and our new principals have what they need to make good human resources decisions and things that will support their students and staff for the rest of the year. And so when we come back, we have an exciting guest. She is a wealth of information, and I call her all the time.
I can't wait to hear what she's going to teach us today.
Okay, Chris, welcome back. I would like to introduce our guest, Nicole Land. She currently serves as our district's HR director, and she has also served at Valley Ranch and Porter Elementary as a campus principal. She attended SFA, so she's a lumberjack. Go Lumberjacks. And this is her 17th year in education. And so we want to thank you so much, Ms. Land, for joining us. We're so excited to have you.
Absolutely.
And this topic is very timely. We're in the hiring season, and school's ending, so we thought, what a great guest, Chris, to have HR, right?
Absolutely.
Human resources.
Who doesn't want to know how to get hired?
Thank you.
So when I think of HR, before I became a principal, and even at the beginning of my principalship, when I thought about HR, like what would I need HR for? I really thought of like when people would resign, or maybe I would add an FTE,
right,
and you would call with the great news, I'm getting a teacher. You know, that's what I think of. So I need an English teacher, I need a math teacher. But really, the reason we wanted you here is HR is so much more.
Absolutely.
So just give us just a little brief rundown of why would a new principal or an aspiring leader even need to reach out to HR?
For sure. Like you said, we think about job fairs and hiring, but it is much more comprehensive in the HR department. We think about, when you have to have leave, maybe there's a family medical leave situation going on. Our department assists with that. We also have our benefits that we help our employees with, which is such an important decision that we make at the beginning of each school year. So we have those resources as well. I also think about one of the most important functions, like you said, that you don't know until you sit in the chair is our mission, which is to problem solve. Okay.
Oh, yes. That's a great mission.
Absolutely. So we really want to be proactive instead of reactive. So what can we do when there's a problem before it snowballs out of control? And a lot of times we find out that people just want to talk about the situation. So as an administrator, you're going to call, we're going to talk through some things, we're going to game plan, and we're really going to, at the end of the day, just find a solution for the problem. So we're a catch-all for that, of course, in a district of our size.
Sure. I love, I know even my own personal experience, things have come up and I just thought to myself, maybe I could just run that by Miss Land. And so like you said, it was a quick conversation, easy problem solved.
Absolutely.
However, I wasn't really sure the direction to go. And you were so supportive in that too, Miss Land.
Thank you.
Yes. So then, our topic today is really to try to help new principals and aspiring leaders just be proactive, like you said, and to maybe avoid some common missteps they may have.
Yes.
So then let's just talk about, what are some things that may indicate a new principal may be struggling in their role, and how can these issues be addressed, like you said, proactively?
Absolutely. So if I'm not hearing from a new principal, I'm concerned. And sometimes as a new principal or an aspiring administrator, if you will, sometimes we want to sit back and act like we have all the answers because it can come across as maybe weakness. That's kind of our insecurities about the situation, but it is the exact opposite in human resources. We want you to reach out because two heads are always better than one. I may not always have the answers, when you call, Donda, but I rely on my former experience. We oftentimes collaborate within our office to come up with these solutions. So it's kind of like a fear, but it ultimately translates to you're not advocating for support and you're looking like you have it all together when you really don't.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I'm reading about for leadership is decision-making fatigue. And so a principal I've read can make anywhere from 350 to 450 decisions a day.
Yes.
And so with decision-making fatigue, you must reach out to someone, even if it's to just bounce an idea off of. And I do think that shows strength.
Yes.
That's a great point because you do want to show you have it all together. And so there's that part, but that's that emotional maturity that we've talked about, emotional intelligence,
Absolutely,
Chris,
yeah.
that we've talked about in another episode. And so I love that thought.
Picking up the telephone is one of the most essential things that you can do as a first-year administrator. Calling the support offices that we have within our district. That was a little nugget that someone dropped in my lap when I first came here. Nicole, you're coming from a small rural school district. You're coming to a larger school district that has those resources and supports. Call the experts in that field and get that advice.
And I do think that makes New Caney ISD unique in it really doesn't matter what problem I have or even anything I want to celebrate. I have someone to call at the central office.
Yes.
And one of the things that Ms. Schaffner does so well in the aspiring administrator and for principals in our principal meetings, we have a network within our own district. And so she encourages us, make sure that we have that group chat going.
Yes.
And then so we know we have district support. We have layers. So
Absolutely.
There's a district support. Certainly you could reach out to a friend right away. But we always have that district support. We have each other. We have our APs. But when you're making a lot of decisions, you need to be able to just stop and then get someone to be that sounding board for you. Even if it's, I call you sometimes, Nicole, and say, Nicole, this is what I'm thinking though. What are your thoughts?
Yes.
What can you add?
Yes.
I love that. So then let's just talk about one of the things that I've learned with all of this is, it's always go to policy. Policy's there to support us.
Yes.
But sometimes people don't really consider the ethical things. And so could you talk a little bit about what the difference and what we need to know about ethical behavior versus violating policy?
Okay. So I like that key word ethical. What did it bring to my mind? It brought to my forefront the Texas Educator Code of Ethics. Okay. And those are those like general rules that guide us how we should treat students, how we should treat our colleagues, how we should treat our school officials, act in the community, all those things. They're
so
general.
Nicole, this made me think of whenever I see in our handbook that says work in the spirit of cooperation.
Yes.
And so that's really an ethical thing,
Absolutely,
isn't it?
absolutely
Sure.
it is. And it's not along those lines. Ethics are not going to outline everything that you shall and shall not do. It's going to be general. That's when you transition into the policy that gives you the details.
Oh, that's good.
The
tip.
meat, the details about every situation that you can imagine is encompassed in your policy. So that's the difference between the two.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea. So maybe what are some examples maybe of ethics and things? Really, maybe it's that work, what I just said though, that working of spirit and cooperation. What else could we think of an example of ethical behavior?
So, I look at it as the golden rule. Treat others how you would have them treat you. Another good guiding principle is in the classroom as well as on the job as a principal. Would you do this same thing? Would you say these things? Would you act in this manner if the superintendent was in the room or the child's parent? Those are some guiding things about our ethics, about what we should and shouldn't do. Now, I didn't list what you should and of course, you shouldn't treat people poorly or use profanity, for an extreme example.
Sure.
I didn't say those. I said treat them right. And so that is broad. That is an ethical thing, your moral character that guides you for what the community standards are.
Sure. But that guiding principle I love because it's easy.
Yes.
When you say, how do I want to be treated?
Absolutely.
I mean, that is 30-second talk.
Yes.
When we talk about ethical behavior, we don't have to break open a book.
Nope.
And would you say that in front of your mother?
Right. We don't have to open up policy to find that. It's like common sense things about how you should do and
if
treat
you wouldn't
others.
say that in front of your grandmother,
There you
would
go.
you say it to the staff member or the child?
Yes.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. So could you highlight just maybe a few critical areas of where new principals or aspiring leaders may overlook or underestimate their responsibilities?
Oh, absolutely. Man, if I could go back and do it again after learning from all the experts that are now sitting in the chairs and the things that I've learned as I've moved up and progressed, would do such a better job, right? And so some of those things that I learned as a principal, one of the most important things that you can do is hiring, which is what we are in the prime time of doing right now, right?
Yes.
Donda, I laughed when you said you referred to it as the Hunger Games.
Yes.
And that energy that comes up because all the principals are battling over the best of the best, and we're competing to, recruit and get those teachers that we want to shape the culture and climate on our campus. But sometimes we get caught up in, hey, I'm getting worried. What's the time? What's the date? I'm meeting that deadline.
Getting close to June.
Right. And we start to skip corners. We cut corners rather. And we don't take the time to vet the application. We don't look at their job history. We don't look at their resume. We don't look at their professional references.
So, and maybe we even get into the lane of, well, maybe it's not as bad as it looks.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and a lot of times that's another sounding board. You call and you say, hey, Nicole, what do you think about this? And I'd say, look, I'm just advising you, this seems problematic, but at the end of the day, it is your decision to make. But I think, again, just taking the time to vet it, look at those important questions. Did they resign in lieu of termination from another job? Were they on administrative leave? Were they under investigation? Did they leave mid-year? Those are important questions that we need to slow down and answer. And we sometimes get wrapped up again, and sometimes we settle too.
Yes.
We settle too soon. It's May, and I get it. The time's clicking. The time is moving forward. But we need to stop and make one of the most important decisions that can have lasting impact, right, on the district and our students if we don't make the right decisions about hiring.
Yes, that's great advice. One of the things I do, because I have those feelings still myself. So when I get that, I think that's another way that Chris, that emotional intelligence gets involved. Mm-hmm. So I recognize I'm very self-aware. Okay, Donda, it's June. And so how are you really looking at this? Right. And I make sure first I get the people around me. So my APs I trust, I get them look at this real quick for me. I make sure that I have people with me in the room when I'm hiring.
Absolutely. The committee.
Yes.
The committee. Yes.
And there are more than one there's more than one thing that they are there for.
Yes.
It's really to give you clarity.
Right.
Because I can't help it. I need the person. And so I just recognize that my lens is a little skewed.
Yes.
Because I know I need the person. I'm thinking about the kids like, oh, we've got to have a teacher. And so whenever you have that committee around you, and then the person leaves the room, that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, so what did you think?
Yep.
And then I could say, well, but... And then they can talk you off that ledge, so to speak, so that you make sure you're doing the best hiring, because it does have lasting effects. Yeah, very good.
And another area you asked about that, sometimes you overlook and underestimate as a new administrator or principal, effective communication. Oh my goodness.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. It's so important as a leader to establish that it's top down truly.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's also easy to think you've communicated when in fact you have not.
Yes. Explicit.
Yes.
I always think about, don't leave anything to the imagination, be explicit about
Absolutely.
it. Like if you had no schema, am I going to be able to read the weekly bulletin and understand what the expectations are? And along those lines of effective communication, we need a weekly bulletin. I talk about, planning in advance and as advance as possible. 2 week is preferred on putting something on the calendar for the staff and even for our parents. Really, you need to do that a month in advance.
Right.
That's why we do all these things to organize our things, and like our PLC calendar for the year. We know what to expect. And that way we're organized, we're systematic, it's effectively communicated, because a lot of things we take for granted. We think we told them and we have our schema and they should understand, but that is not the case.
No.
You have to put yourself at that beginning level teacher phase.
0 year.
And communicate it to them as such. Over communicate.
Sure. No, I love that. And I love that layer is already in place. So for principals now,
Yes.
current seating principals. So our district, Ms. Schaffner has us create, plans for communication,
Yes.
plans for learning, plans for students. So we have all of these things in place
Yes.
that assists a new principal.
Yes.
And a seasoned principal, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Because I love when I hear from a new principal, because it's things that maybe I take for granted and become more passive about.
Yes.
That I need to, I hadn't thought about that in a while. I need to be a little more.
You can definitely hit that comfort zone.
Yes.
And not do the things that got you to where you are today. And that's a dangerous zone to be in.
That's very
Absolutely.
dangerous.
And another little nugget, don't meet just to meet. Be respectful of people's time. And don't just throw something on the calendar because it's a weekly meeting and you don't need to have it. That's the most precious gift that you can give any teacher on your campus, right? Is the gift of time. So be respectful of that and have meaningful meetings.
Yes, I love that. I have even had, we've been in a PLC, and then maybe I even join in and have give some information and,
Right.
join the PLC. But one of the things that has happened to me a few times, the time is stopped.
There you
We'll
go.
stop and talk. We will stop talking now.
Absolutely.
And so I have literally said, okay, so now I told you this would end here, and we're going to end. If you would like to email me, and leave it open,
Yes.
of course.
Yes.
But we adjourn
Yes.
when it's time to adjourn.
There you go.
And so, yes, that's very important things. Okay, so just, the last little bit I have, just what are some resources or support systems, that you might recommend for new principals, just to help them navigate the challenges that they might encounter?
Yes. So, of course, pick up the telephone, call, and we talked about that earlier. The Texas Documentation Handbook, that's a wonderful resource for
Yes,
new
it is.
administrators, right?
Yes, it is.
That we have. Also, referring to your board policy, going in.
And that's
a lot
online,
of people,
easy to Google.
Yes, search feature.
Search feature, yes.
Absolutely. Our employee handbook is a good guide for new administrators. And then also your Texas Educator Code of Ethics that we talked about.
Oh, I love
So those
that.
are some very important resources for any new administrator.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, well, Chris, we have got some really good information to share. This has been a great session.
Yeah, this will be really helpful for
Yes.
a lot of educators.
So I appreciate you coming so much, Miss Land. And, we like to end our segments with a great positive quote. And I was wondering if you have something to share with us.
Absolutely. It's very applicable to what we've been talking about today. And so people don't leave companies, they leave managers.
Yes, that makes
Super
so much sense.
impactful.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a
Yes.
great session.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we're going to answer our exit tickets, and we look forward to coming back. All right, we're back from our break, and it's time for our exit ticket section. Today's question comes from Aaron Tom Hay from Pine Valley Middle School. And Aaron asks, what approaches are you using to effectively communicate with parents during crucial conversations?
So, Miss Land, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I have the pleasure with visiting with parents, in my current role. If it reaches the HR level sometimes, it's escalated, of course, but I still have that, opportunity to have those moments with those parents and experience this. And so crucial conversations, man, that's an important skill to have as
Absolutely.
an administrator at any level. It's also important for even our teachers, right?
100%.
Yes.
So it's having courageous conversations, right, with people. And so when we're meeting with our parents, the first thing to do is to be an active listener. I found out a lot of times people just want to vent. Okay. Let them get it all out. They feel like they haven't been heard. And at the end of the day, understand the parent's perspective. They want what's best for their student, right? And that's ultimately what we want as well.
Yes.
And something got confused in that time. And so we have to remember that, and remember that that's their most precious resource in the world, their child. And it should be our most important thing that we do as an educator, is to help these children. So we have to kind of build that common ground and build on that. It's important to be authentic when you're talking with parents,
Absolutely.
right? Also, we have to sometimes admit when we've done wrong. We make mistakes as teachers, administrators, directors, and it's important to have that fortitude to say, we messed up. Let me make this right.
Absolutely.
Okay. And a lot of times they just want to hear that acknowledgement about what's happened.
I agree.
And then come up with a solution.
Yes. And that builds your credibility anyway, when you're willing to be vulnerable that way and just to acknowledge that I made a mistake.
Absolutely.
Just like you said.
Absolutely.
There are 3 ladies I'd like to call out from Kings Manor Elementary: Miss Lopez, Miss Watson, Miss Dandy.
Okay.
So I was able to see firsthand how they handle a parent in a difficult situation. And the first thing they did is just acknowledge the behavior, but the first thing they did was say what the student did right and what they do well.
Love it.
And then when they expressed, their concerns about the child's behavior, it was about the behavior. I mean, nothing more.
Right.
They didn't, and they didn't try to make excuses. It was nothing like that. It was simply the behavior. Then the teachers were asking the parent for their help, and they said, so what is it that you try at home that we could try?
Yes.
So that they were trying to build that partnership.
Absolutely.
And then they reminded the parent the whole way through, I just want you to know how smart little Johnny is, so to speak.
Love it.
And how we love having him in our class, and we want the best for him. And the parent, who came in very escalated, left hugging their neck, because they made it about the behavior, not about the child. They were very complimentary, and they made the parent understand that they do want them in their class.
Absolutely.
That just because the child was behaving a certain way, it was not about the child, but about the behavior. It was masterful. I wish I would have videoed them.
Yes. And also an important thing to think about, kind of with the lens of an administrator, there are sometimes, despite our efforts and our heart about the conversation, that things get escalated. You always need to know some good advice is you need typically need a witness in the room. Sometimes though, that can rise the level of the conversation. So kind of gauge it. Sometimes bringing too many people in the room can seem like
very
us against
intimidating.
them.
Sure.
Absolutely. So kind of navigate and get a feel for what's going on if you need someone present, right? If it's going to be contentious, and that. And then when you have that person there, also know that you can also pause a meeting. Like, hey, I see that there are a lot of emotions right now. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to go run. Would you like some water?
I love that.
Things like that to kind of calm the situation, have a reset. And at the end of the day, if things, still can't be solved, we can use those tools, pull it out of our toolbox. We're going to agree to disagree. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the same goal of doing what's best for Johnny, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, just having those kind of tools about knowing sometimes there are a few times that you need to kind of pause a meeting, reset, maybe reconvene even, or you may have to call it, for the day. So
one of the tips I like to give as well that's worked well for me is when I have to have a crucial conversation, I look for an administrator or a leader, for sure a leader, but someone who already has a pretty good rapport with the person.
Yes.
And so that they do feel a little more comfortable. And we can have those conversations. They don't feel like it's us against them, but have an administrator that has had maybe a positive or two interaction with them.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super important. I know from like a teaching perspective, a piece of advice that I received when I was a new teacher was to try and contact all your parents early.
Oh.
With like
Put
successes.
those drops in the bucket.
Successes for the kids.
Yes.
That way, the first time you're contacting these parents, it's not because of a behavior. It's because little Johnny did amazing on his first assignment.
Yes.
And again, I think it goes back to Chris of what the Kings Manor teachers, the three were able to do is I do want your child in my class. I'm not waiting for them to fail and then call you about it. I do want them in my class, and I want to let you know I do see their value.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And that's so important as a parent.
Absolutely.
That's what we would want for our kids.
Absolutely.
So it's like perfect advice for a young teacher or an administrator.
You're right.
Anyone across the board. Make those positive contacts as early as you can.
Yes, I agree.
All right. Well, Dr. Slayton, are you ready to close out the show?
Okay, I think we are. And so, again, Ms. Land, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. It was very insightful discussion, and I know it's very needed, especially at this time, because this is a part of leadership that's, just has to be. You have to develop this skill, and I loved all your insight and answers for.
I learned a lot today, and I hope our audience learned a lot today, too.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, we'll catch you next time on Evolving Educators.